Okay, before we move on, let's do a quick review of Boyle's Law. So Boyle's Law says that if kept at a constant temperature, the pressure of a gas is inversely proportional to its volume. How that plays out for breathing is because we are changing the volume of our lungs, which alters its pressure compared to the outside. So during inhalation or inspiration, when we're breathing in, our diaphragm is pulled down and our rib cage expands, which increases the volume of our lungs. Oh, that's not able to. So if the volume increases, that means that the pressure will decrease. And if the pressure inside the lungs is lower than the pressure outside, according to Boyle's Law, air will flow from high pressure towards the area of low pressure, bringing air into the lungs. And because the trachea is held open by cartilage and the alveoli are held open by that surfactant, all of that space is able to be filled up by air being drawn into the body, going from area of higher pressure to an area of lower pressure. Likewise, when we go to exhale or expire the air, the diaphragm relaxes and goes back to that domed position, and so do the muscles of the rib cage, decreasing the volume of the lungs. And then that will likewise increase the pressure. And because the pressure has increased, now it's higher pressure inside the lungs than it is outside. And it's going to cause air to naturally flow from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure, causing the lungs to expel the most amount of air possible. So that's the mechanism of breathing is not because we are sucking air in all the time, although we do have the ability to do that, right? You can manually pull air into the body. But because of this Boyle's Law and the interaction of how air is moving from high pressure to low pressure, this is what keeps us being able to inhale and exhale while we're sleeping. So our automatic nervous system controls the movement of the diaphragm and the muscles around our rib cage and controls the volume of the lungs, which is going to change the pressure inside the lungs and cause it to move in whichever direction, either in or out of the lungs. Pretty cool. In your lecture outline, or your lab for this week, you're going to be reading a graph called a spirograph. And this is a measure of our pulmonary function. So how much air capacity our lungs can hold. So when you're reading the spirograph, or when you're creating the spirograph, a person would breathe normally into this tube, and the tube is measuring how much air is passing over a given amount of time. And then the technician would ask you to take a complete breath. So here's the normal breaths: in, out, in, out, in, out. And then they would ask you to take a very deep breath. So as much air as you could possibly take in, and then expel as much air as you could possibly breathe out. So in your lab for this week, you're going to be defining each of these terms based on volume of air inside the lungs, and then how much more volume our lungs can hold than we actually use. So I'm going to let you guys explore that in the lab for this week. But of course, always, if you have any questions, we should definitely talk about it. But your lab is going to actually walk you through what each of those individual terms means. Okay, so we said that our breathing is under two main systems of control: the nervous system and then a chemical control system. But they're both kind of interrelated. So the nervous system, which obviously we haven't talked about yet, but all of our body system is going to function together, so we're going to have to jump ahead, is controlled by our respiratory control center. And this is housed in the medulla oblongata of the brain, which is the very base of the brain. And this respiratory control center is a part of our automatic nervous system. And this is the part of the brain that continually sends those messages to the diaphragm and the muscles of the rib cage to stimulate inhalation. So changing the volume of the lungs so that we can stimulate that mechanism of breathing. This also controls the rate and depth of our breathing. So the rate at which the diaphragm and the rib cage muscles are contracted, and then how much they're contracted to control the depth of breathing. We can, of course, also control this through voluntary muscle contractions as well, but this automatic nervous system function is what allows us to keep breathing while we're asleep or while we're unconscious, which is obviously extremely important. That's the nervous system control. And then we have a chemical control as well. So as the cells in our body create ATP through cellular respiration, hopefully we remember that the byproduct of that is carbon dioxide. And as carbon dioxide enters the bloodstream to be carried back to the lungs to be expired, it reacts with water in our blood. And carbon dioxide plus water equals carbonic acid. And carbonic acid is then dissolved in the water, and since it's an acid, it's going to release hydrogen ions. And this changes the pH of our blood. It makes it more acidic. So it's going to lower the pH. And this is going to be a signal to the body that our blood pH has changed, and we need to do something to return to that homeostasis, to return to that 7.4 blood pH. So this is what activates our chemical control of breathing. Chemoreceptors are sensory receptors located throughout the body that are able to detect these changes. And these chemoreceptors detect changes in blood pH. So we're going to find them in our major muscle groups. And then we're going to find several in our, where's my mouse? Oh, I can't find it. In the aorta. Located within the heart. This is convenient because all blood is going to be pumped through the heart. So as the pH of the blood becomes more acidic, the chemoreceptors tell the respiratory control center to speed up breathing. So when the chemoreceptors detect a change in the pH, specifically a lowering of the pH because of that buildup of carbonic acid, it's going to tell the respiratory control center to speed up breathing. So more rapidly contract the diaphragm to change the volume of the lungs more quickly. This happens because the increase in acidity is an indication that there's more CO2 in the blood, and speeding up breathing not only speeds up oxygen being brought into the body, but it also speeds up the discharge of CO2. So speeds up getting rid of some of those byproducts out of the body. Those are our two chemical controls of breathing. So just like all the other chapters, here is a nice list of review questions. As you are going through those, please contact me with any questions or anything that you would like to review in more detail. One of the benefits of these video lectures is that you can pause to take your notes, but of course there's always the chance that maybe I didn't explain something well, and we don't have that face-to-face interaction for you to say, hey, back up, I didn't understand that. But don't forget, I am still here, and I want to hear from you.